So there's a man in Massachusetts who's accused of kidnapping, torture, and murder. Some serious accusations here. And his lawyer is concerned because he thinks there's something about his man that could lead to a trial being loaded in a certain direction, let's say, that would prejudice the jury, if you will, against his man. So what exactly is that? Well, the guy looks like this. Yeah, I can see why the lawyer would be concerned about his client. So for those of you listening to the live show right now, I can't even pronounce this guy's name. I think his name is Caius Veiovis. Okay, they're showing a picture of him in 1999 and 2011, and he has devil horns. He has devil horns, he has a tattoo that says 666 on his forehead, and he has a tattoo of a horn through his nose and other random writing on his face. Okay, so what the lawyer wants to do is show a jury his picture beforehand to see if they're okay with his tattoo, and if people are a little like, little strange about his tattoo, then he wants to dismiss them and say, well, you're not allowed to be on this jury because you're prejudiced against my guy. Okay? So, is that a legitimate position for the lawyer to take? Now, look, I understand the lawyer's just doing his job. His job is to advocate for his client. But if you were the judge, would you allow that? Would you allow the lawyer to ask people, hey, are you cool with this, before the trial even begins? Yes or no? That's the question that's on the table here. And to me, the answer is hell no. And this goes back to a conversation we had, I think, when we did a story about Mark Cuban, because Mark Cuban had like some borderline prejudice/racist comments. And we spoke about it, and to me, there's a major point that I want to harp away on here, because there's a big difference between prejudging, that's where the term prejudice comes from, to prejudge. Prejudging versus judging, okay? So in other words, if we're talking about somebody who's on trial and they have tattoos, they have a tattoo. Okay, that's not relevant to the trial because it's a fucking tattoo and that's nothing. It's like having an earring nowadays or wearing a watch even, right? It's becoming very mainstream and people understand that. If we're talking about somebody that has a half sleeve, okay, it's still nothing. If we're talking about somebody that has a full sleeve, still nothing, right? If we're talking about two full sleeves, if we're talking about somebody that their arms are covered in tattoos, their back, maybe even like parts of their legs or whatever, it's still nothing. I'm not judging you because there's nothing to judge. Tattoos are just tattoos, just art, right? But there's a difference between that and you have a Nazi tattoo. Okay, you know what that tells me? You support Nazis. If you have a tattoo that says, I support Al-Qaeda, if you have bin Laden's face on your kneecap, okay, well it's not prejudging to look at a guy with a Nazi tattoo, something that says Heil Hitler, has a swastika, and has a statement written in German about killing the Jews. Yes, it's not judging if you're talking about that. Okay, it's not prejudging if you're talking about that. That's just judging. And judging is fine. Judging is what I do for a living. Judging is what you should do if you're a rational human being. You should just not prejudge. You should wait until you have enough information to the point where it points to a logical and rational conclusion. If you do it before that point, then it's prejudging. If you do it after, then it's judging. Judging is fine. Prejudging is not. So with this guy here, with all the tattoos on his face, am I going to load the jury to be sympathetic to the guy because of all the devil horns and the 666 on his forehead? No, of course not. Look, that's a decision you made. That's part of the person that you are, okay? And now when it's inconvenient for you to be that person, now you want to try to stack the jury in the other direction, which ironically, that would actually poison the jury. To make sure that everybody is cool with it and they wouldn't allow that into the conversation or into the discussion, that's actually the way that you're prejudging. Because you're judging in advance that the guy with the tattoos on his face that says 666 and has the devil horns is a good person, even though the horns and the 666 are there, which might point in the opposite direction. Look, this reminds me of a case. There was a case a few years back. It was the same thing. I believe the guy had tattoos on his face that said racist. or there was a skull skull tattoo on his face. Okay, we've seen the stories where there's Nazi tattoos on your face and stuff like that. To act like that's not a relevant piece of information to consider when looking at all the evidence is silly. That is a rational piece to consider. Okay, again, I want to reiterate something, man. To lump all tattoos together and just say, can you take into account tattoos? That's too broad. That's way too broad. That's like saying, can you take into account somebody being Muslim? Well, it depends. Were they Muslim and part of Al-Qaeda, and we have evidence that they're part of Al-Qaeda? Or were they Muslim and they were part of CARE, which is a very moderate American Muslim group which tries to get peace? There's a difference between the two, so it varies widely. Okay, can we take into account if the guy's bald? Well, was he part of a neo-Nazi skinhead group that lynched people? Well, in that case, yes. If it's not in that case, then no. So it's a complicated situation. If you have a tattoo of a butterfly or a tribal tattoo on your arm, which is insanely popular and a lot of people have it, well, no, of course not. But if you have a tattoo that says Heil Hitler, yes, I'm going to take that into account. If you have devil horns and 666, yes, I'm going to take that into account. No, if I'm the judge, I'm throwing that out. No, you don't get to pick people who are going to be cool with the way your devil horns and 666 looks, because that's prejudicing the jury in the other direction. You should get people who have who you don't know what they think about that, because they're supposed to independently judge the evidence based on their own merits. So, I mean, honestly, it's a silly request from the lawyer. I get it, he's just doing his job, right? But no, of course you don't load the jury in favor of the guy with the devil horns and 666 tattoo on his face. No, you weigh that in along with all the other evidence, and it may be a smaller piece of evidence compared to, I don't know, his DNA on a knife or some shit, right? But I'm always in favor of more information in trials, because that's the only way to get the most accurate picture, is to have the most information.